All right, and we're back. So this is going to be my top values for week one for on the DraftKings side for DFS. So I'm going to be going over every position group, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. I won't be going over defense. That's the only one I won't go over just because basically we're looking to pay down on defense. So we're not really looking for the highest producing defense as far as that is concerned. So um, when I'm talking about quarterbacks, I'm looking at you know the the ease that you can stack them with their receivers and pass catchers. I'm also looking at the price point for the roster flexibility that they provide and the capability of them hitting their threshold bonuses. So 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, whether or not they're capable of hitting those bonuses um, in the DraftKings competitions and contests. So, um, then as far as skill players, I'm looking at who has the best value, who has standalone value without being stacked with their quarterback, especially looking at their price point so that they can provide a certain amount of flexibility to your roster when you're uh, building up your squad there. So let's get into it. All right. So we're just going to start off with quarterbacks, as I said, and we're going to start relatively cheap here. I'm going to start off with the lowest salary players. My first and number one guy is going to be Trevor Lawrence. So, with the news that Laviska Shenault um, has departed to go to Carolina, I think that just bodes well for Christian Kirk and that offense. Puts a little bit more emphasis on Trevor to trust in Christian Kirk after he got a major contract. Obviously, Travis Etienne is coming back from injury this year. This is going to be Trevor's second year as a starter with a whole different. It's going to be basically a brand new squad, in my opinion, as far as the head coach goes. Obviously, Urban Meyer. I don't have to explain exactly how terrible of a head coach he was, how big of a distraction he was during last season. Um, Basically, everybody should be just happy that Trevor Lawrence didn't sustain an injury during that joke of a season, basically. Um, so, another big reason that I like Trevor Lawrence for week one is because of the salary. Uh, he's very cheap, very easy to double stack with, um, especially with the fact that Christian Kirk is under. He's gonna be under $6,000. He's at 5,100. His top two receivers. His top two receivers are under $5,500. Um, that should be plenty uh, to convince you to look at Trevor Lawrence or at least give him a look for week one. Um, and another thing I like to think about is Jacksonville versus Washington. One quote that I kind of think about is I forget the name of the movie. I think it's called Stand and Deliver. One of the lines that always just gets stuck in my head is a negative times a negative equals a positive. You got two pretty bad teams that can end up in a sloppy shootout. So I think Detroit had a couple games like that last year where obviously they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, but with them, with MCDC being the big, big motivator that he is, um, he was able to rally the troops and have comebacks and really push the pace towards the end of games a lot last year. And with Doug Peterson being a real big players coach, I can definitely see Jacksonville doing that. Obviously, Ron Rivera is known to be a players coach as well. I think that could be a sneaky shootout, even though the point total isn't exactly the highest on the slate. Um, let's see. And again, as far as roster flexibility. Not only is it very affordable on the Jacksonville side, it's very affordable on the Washington side as well. One thing I've been talking about is Terry McLaurin, how he's the definitive wide receiver one. I've already talked about Curtis Samuel being a huge value in the last video I've done, being a top value for week one. So with that being said, after you set that as a lineup, you're looking at even if you pick a top defense like the Saints, you're still looking at $6,700, and you haven't picked a tight end yet. So just because of those points there, having a Trevor Lawrence stack, having him as in your roster as a quarterback, really provides a lot of flexibility there. My second quarterback on my list is going to be Derek Carr, if I can get to him. Again, similar reasons as Trevor Lawrence. He's at $5,900. One thing that I wanted to point out, last season, I believe it was through the first 3 games, he was on pace to have a record-setting season as far as passing attempts, passing yardage. It looked like a career year for him the first 3 or 4 games, and then I believe that's when all the controversy with Gruden came out. I believe he also got injured. Don't fact check me on that. That's just off the top of my head. Another reason why I like Derek Carr in that spot is because it is one of the highest point total games on the slate against the Chargers. Obviously, you got Justin Herbert on the other side of this game, who's already proven in the past 2 seasons that he's amongst the top quarterbacks in the NFL going into his 3rd year with that offense with pretty stout weapons in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And with Derek Carr, it's fairly easy to build a stack with him. You got Hunter Renfrow, 5,800. Obviously, you're gonna have Devonta Adams, you're gonna have to pay a pretty high price for him. I do not think that Darren Waller is gonna play. I heard Field Yates from ESPN talk about how he thinks it's a contract dispute rather than an injury, so there's still a possibility that he does play if they can figure out his contract. But at $5,400, you can definitely play that instead of Adams and still have a lot of flexibility there, similar to Trevor Lawrence, where you can go after Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, which even if you didn't go after Waller, you're still in pretty decent shape after you pick your defense and everything. If you pay down on defense and pay down on tight end, I'm just trying to find somebody who's decently priced that's actually playable. Evan Ingram, you're still looking at $6,400. That's plenty of salary to have a pretty strong lineup with the rest of your receivers at wide receiver, or rest of your roster for wide receiver and your 2 running backs. So Derek Carr definitely provides a lot of flexibility as far as price point goes for his salary. Another thing that I have on Derek Carr is the probability of him hitting his passing bonus as well. Let's see. He averaged 284 yards a game last season. So, he's 16 yards off from basically averaging a 3-point bonus for passing every game. And assumably, with Devonta Adams coming into the fold, you can only imagine or only assume that it'll put him that much closer to averaging 300 yards every game for the season. So that's another point to put for Derek Carr there. My number 3 pick for week 1 is Jalen Hurts. Let's see. Second year starter. This is basically going to be a make it or break it year for him. You hear a lot of stories about Jalen Hurts being questioned by front office whether or not he's going to be the quarterback of the future for that franchise. I think he's very capable of it. I think he's I'm not saying he's an elite quarterback, but I think he has the potential to be a strong quarterback in the NFL. Definitely can make a playoff run if he had the right tools around him, which the Eagles have done so for getting A.J. Brown from the Titans this offseason. Obviously, they drafted Devonta Smith to help him out with the wide receivers. So I like Jalen Hurts for week 1. One of the reasons why I like him is because of the flexibility of the people around him. Devonta Smith's at $5,500. A.J. Brown being a real wide receiver 1 in the NFL, arguably top 10, especially after his production when healthy, at least in Tennessee. This is another type of game where you got two bad teams could end up being in a ugly shootout. Detroit kind of made a name for themselves in doing that last season, getting a lot of garbage time points, force another team to have to throw the ball more late in games. I can definitely see that. Jalen Hurts, another reason why I like him so much for week 1, or really any week, as long as his salary doesn't get too out of hand, is his floor for rushing. Let's see. He had 147 rushing attempts last year, averaged 51 yards a game. I mean, what more could you want from a quarterback? And then, let's see. What was his average for passing? He averaged 212 yards passing last year, and his only main targets were Dallas Goedert and Devonta Smith. So we're assuming that that's going to be higher this year with the addition of A.J. Brown. I doubt he'll actually average more than 250, 260s. I doubt he will make it there week in and week out. But for week 1 specifically, against the Detroit Lions, specifically for week 1 and the Detroit Lions, really the only threat on the defensive side of the ball, outside of the number 1 draft pick, Hockenson, is Jeff Okudah, who's coming back. I believe he's coming back from injury. I may be wrong on that, but nonetheless, you have Okudah, who I think his main attention is going to be focusing on A.J. Brown, leaving Devonta Smith not open, but with a more manageable matchup as far as cornerbacks go. So if you're building rosters with building stacks with Jalen Hurts, I personally like building it with Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, just because of the flexibility and with the fact that I think they're going to be putting Okudah on A.J. Brown, leaving Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert to get the most target share, being that A.J. Brown is going to be game planned out of the game on the Detroit side of the ball. And again, I doubt, because of his floor with his legs, the way that he can run the ball, he's going to have a high floor, and he's going to have the capability, not saying he will, but he has the capability of getting you a double bonus, 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, depending on how that Detroit defense plays him, whether they're going to try and make him force the ball or whatever. So he definitely has a chance to get either one. Unlikely, but possible that he gets both with his ability to run. Now we're getting into the elite quarterbacks here, kind of like that upper tier. So my next guy is Kyler Murray at $7,200. He's in one of the highest point total games playing against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes' offense. Obviously, Kansas City's going to be without Tyreek Hill, but they've picked up Juju Smith-Schuster, who's going to be their lead pass catcher. And you can only assume that it's just going to be an air raid type game between both squads. Kyler Murray, one of the more efficient passers in the NFL already. I think this is second or third season, I believe. Averages 261 yards a game passing. And this year he doesn't have two running backs in the backfield that split carries. So we can only think that that number could go up with another year under his belt and with the departure of Chase Edmonds. So you think they're going to throw the ball downfield a little bit more. He also has the ability to get you some points with his feet. He rushed for 5 touchdowns last year. I think you'll probably see much the same, if not a little bit more, depending on if he's going to play it safe this year. Obviously, he's had some history with injuries in previous seasons. A lot of people contributed to his size, but nonetheless, you may see much the same as far as rushing touchdowns go. He's going to be without DeAndre Hopkins this first 6 games, I believe. So we're looking at Rondale Moore, Hollywood Brown, as far as stacking him with them. They're relatively affordable. They're not too highly priced, which is good. The highest priced guys, Marquise Brown at $6,200, Rondale Moore, who I've had as a value pick in a previous video, at $4,000. And then on the flip side of that, it's going to be relatively easy to have a bring back player as well. You got their best pass catcher, assumingly best pass catcher, in Juju Smith at $5,200. Highly affordable. Being that it's one of the higher total games of of week 1. So that's some of the biggest reasons why I like Kyler Murray in that spot, regardless of a higher price point at $7,200. And because of the high point total for this game, I would like to assume that Marquise Brown is going to be getting his 100-yard bonus. It's a high probability that Kyler Murray is going to go throw for over 300 yards as well. And then if you use a bring back player for this game, either Juju Smith-Schuster has a good possibility of capturing the 100-yard bonus as well. And if you want to pay up, you can for Travis Kelce. You just have to find some more value picks further down in your flex position, or just pay down on the defensive side of the ball as well. My last pick for value, my last quarterback pick for week 1 is Lamar Jackson. I know I mentioned James Proche in a previous video as a guy I like because of the value he can bring at his price point at $3,300. Rashad Bateman as well. And if you want, you can go Duvernay. I tend to lean towards James Proche And obviously you got Mark Andrews, one of the top tight ends in the NFL. Another main reason that I like Lamar for week 1 is right now he's in a contract dispute, or contract negotiations rather, heading into week 1. Both Lamar and the team have both said that they hope to get it figured out by the first game. Obviously, time is ticking. We've got nearly 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks, before game time for Lamar Jackson to figure out his contract dispute. If they don't figure it out, then this is going to be a contract year, and he's going to be doing everything in his power to win MVP, because he's actually the one that's going to be negotiating his contract. He doesn't have an agent. So if he doesn't figure it out, that bodes even better for Lamar Jackson in week 1. He averages 240 yards a game last season, averaged 63 yards a game last season as well, and he didn't even play all 16 games. He only played 12, so he missed quite a few games last year, most in his career so far. Obviously, he's not overly efficient. He can kind of get reckless as far as throwing the ball. A lot of that can be contributed to drops on Hollywood Brown's part, but I think this season they're going to be a lot more run heavy. I think once Gus Edwards is healthy, once J.K. Dobbins is healthy, you're going to see a lot more option, RPO, even for the NFL, for Lamar Jackson to use his legs. At the $7,300 price point, he doesn't exactly cut off the entire tier of players to pick from. His pass catchers are relatively affordable. Even if you go after Mark Andrews, who's the highest paid, highest salaried tight end on the slate, I believe. Yeah, he is. About $200. So, and it's going to be a very, very condensed target tree for the pass catchers for the Baltimore Ravens. It's mainly going to be Andrews. It's mainly going to be Bateman. I think the next guy in line is going to be Proche. And then on the flip side of that game, you got the New York Jets, who are really, really affordable to stack with as well in that game. You got Elijah Moore, who's assuming to be the number 1 receiver for that offense. Obviously, Joe Flacco is going to be starting. A Super Bowl winning veteran is going to be playing against Lamar, so highly capable of putting up enough numbers to make him a viable fantasy pick for week 1. Again, going back to Lamar, he definitely has a high floor with his rushing ability, has a capability of throwing for 300 yards and running for 100 yards, getting you to double bonus, another 6 points that 90% of the NFL can't do outside of maybe a Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen in the NFL right now. So, and moving on to tight ends, I'm only going to do 3 tight ends for this just because it's kind of I feel like tight ends are more about picking for value rather than for massive production outside of, your Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Kittle, Kyle Pitts. So this is going to be kind of similar to the value picks just for tight ends though. But these are also going to be guys who have standalone value that I think can outproduce their salary point. So to start off with, for tight ends, for my top picks for week 1, we're looking at Mo Alley-Cox for the Indianapolis Colts. He had a really good preseason for the Indianapolis Colts. Upgrade at quarterback with Matt Ryan. He's a big red zone target for them once they get inside, for whenever they don't use Jonathan Taylor. Now, obviously, they're going to be more. Obviously, the Colts are going to be more inclined to use Taylor inside the red zone, but in a few cases, they may be able to utilize him, or in a few cases, they might be able to use Mo Alley Cox and a lot of play action packages inside the red zone. They're also looking at a very slim pass catching room as well. They only have Michael Pittman that I can think of for as a really well established pass catcher. They're also playing against a Houston defense that is they're playing against a very poor Houston defense, which bodes well for Indianapolis and Mo Alley Cox at a $3,400 standalone price point. My next top tight end pick for week 1 is going to be Hunter Henry at a $3,800 price point, playing against the Miami Dolphins. Hunter Henry's already established himself as a top target for Mac Jones. He's a big red zone target, has had a really good preseason as well. I think they're going to pick up where they left off last season. Obviously, first season for Mac Jones, kind of easing into the NFL a little bit. Showed glimpses of greatness during his rookie year under Bill Belichick, and along with that, along with the growth that Mac Jones had, you saw that in Hunter Henry's production for fantasy. I believe that Hunter Henry, matched up with the Miami Dolphins linebackers, has a very good chance to be a viable pass catcher for week 1 against that Miami defense. My top pick for tight ends for week 1 DFS on DraftKings is TJ Hockenson. I feel like this is going to be one of those games that have the potential to shoot out, just because of the Detroit Lions' tendency to get a lot of garbage time touchdowns, a lot of garbage time receptions, yardage. That helps out with fantasy, which helps out with fantasy owners. I believe that he had T.J. Hockenson averaged about 7 targets a game last season, which I think that's only going to increase with the more he's worked with Jared Goff leading up to week 1. He had double-digit fantasy weeks every week except for 4 weeks, I believe it was. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in all the games that he did play in, which were 12, so he played in 12 games, and he only missed out on double-digit fantasy days 4 out of the 12 games. And he was close on one of them at 8.2. So more times than not, he's going to have a double-digit fantasy point day for you in your roster. It's another year under MCDC, Dan Campbell for the Detroit Lions. They also picked up his 5th-year option on his contract, which bodes well for him and the organization's belief that he is a good that he is the tight end of the franchise, which is only going to command more targets, more production from him for fantasy owners. And again, playing against a less than stellar secondary for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think TJ Hockenson bodes well as a standalone value for week 1 DFS on DraftKings. All right, so I just went over my top picks for quarterbacks, my top picks for tight ends for week 1 DFS on DraftKings. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, follow the channel. Again, shout out to Fantasyholics for their support on sharing the links to my videos on their page on Facebook. I appreciate you guys for doing that. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to Twitch. Follow me on Twitter. Drop a comment on the videos. Put it in chat, whatever. Tell me how I can do better. Tell me if you agree. Who's your favorite picks at each position for week 1? Tell me what you think for week 1. Who are you focusing on this upcoming fantasy season? So thank you guys for watching. Come back and follow the channel for more fantasy content for the NFL season this year. Thanks.